Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday. In tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about mastering networking labs and what kind of cool stuff we can do with networking. And if you guys are new to the channel, you know the deal. Please like, subscribe, and share, and enjoy watching our live tonight. We have an awesome guest, a good friend of mine, and I want to bring him in. His name is Rob. I want to have him introduce himself, and we'll get started for this evening.
What's up, dude?
Hey, what's up, Rob? How's everything?
Living the dream, brother.
Awesome. We chatted prior and it was good catching up. Thank you for having the opportunity and giving me the opportunity to chit chat, and whoever else is out there listening in, just some people just probably returning just to, watch us shoot the shit.
Sure.
And maybe learn a little bit about some networking skills, networking TCP IP skills. And so who is Rob? For those that for those that don't know, who is Rob? And obviously you have a YouTube channel as well, so you can talk on that as well and obviously share it. So those who want to know and learn about your stuff can go ahead and do so.
Sure. So I'm a network guy. I have been since long time ago. Late 2000s is when I got into it. My technical background, I've got a route switch CCIE. That's what most people know me for. So, it's been an implementation engineer most of my career. That's how I got started. I did the traditional path though. You go to get your A plus or your Net plus from CompTIA. Then I picked my CCNA up in, I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I got my CCNA, got my CCNP, and then I started going down the track at CCIE, probably 2012, 2013, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was finally able to pick it up in October of 2015 after the third attempt. So that's an ass kicker of an exam.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that have taken it. I know a lot of CCIEs, and it's one of those certifications where you can't go in half cocked. You got to be all in. And if anybody is, if your entire family, I mean, I don't know, depends on your situation, but if you're not like, if everybody isn't like understanding what it is you're trying to go into, and that you're basically going to be head down on the keyboard, buried in the configuration guides for the next 2 years, that's essentially what it is. Now, fortunately, there's a lot of good training companies out there that go into that, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like CCNA and CCNP. I talk about this on my channel quite a bit. Are like, you could have an employer could come to you and say, "Hey, Pat, I want you to go get your CCNP. We'll pay for it." Okay, it's conceivable to earn that. I've never, with as long as I've been in the industry, I've never heard of an employer going to an employee and saying, "Hey, man, we need you to get your CCIE." Because it's one of those things where it's a personal endeavor, not a professional one. So it does benefit you significantly once you have it professionally, but to me, it's a personal goal. Like you can't just go into it and, the back before they made the change in 2019, where they flipped it over from the dedicated written exam to the core being your new written exam. What they do, well, the written exam used to never qualify you for anything. You didn't get a certification by taking the written. So now you do, right? If you pass the core exam for any particular track for the NP, you automatically qualify for the lab exam, which is actually kind of, I don't know. I think it's kind of shitty, to be honest with you, because it's like, okay, well, you're really not there yet. It's like apples and oranges. I've taken the core exam for SP about a year ago to recertify my the route switch, and just for the simple fact that I didn't want to spend anywhere the amount of time needed for wireless and for SP access and all that garbage. We'll talk about that when we get into like some of the complexities of like labbing and whatnot. But I was talking to a buddy of mine when I was at live. He's just like, "So did you see what they did for CCNP?" He's like, "Yeah, they got the written exam for all the technical, like the implementation tracks, are gone." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Because I actually was there to recertify, and he's like, "Yeah, they're gone. Like you can't, like you're going to take the core exam for that track. That becomes your written." So I looked it up, and I'm like, "Wow, it was night and day difference between what I had taken and what they do now." So You know, the certification folks told me it was essentially their way of trying to make it the barrier to entry for CCIE easier. And
Hmm.
is it now? Is it? Like, yeah, I think you made it harder because you made the amount of topics, it kind of watered them down a little bit. So to me, yeah, you could at least hit your core exam, but then you were going to be 70% of the way to your lab versus maybe 30, 40 with the old way.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was interesting to watch that play out. But that was like one of the most significant things that popped out at me when they redid their certification tracks. But it's been an interesting journey thus far. I'm one of those type of people that I'll never stop learning. I'll be probably 65 walking around with a cane, you know, on the channel talking about, how this particular protocol works or whatever, because just, it's become who I am. So
Hmm.
I really enjoy doing it. I think that's the big thing. I really enjoy doing it. And,
Hmm.
so most people on my channel know that I'm actually going after another track right now. I decided I'm going to go back and go after the one that got away. So I took SP back in November of 2019 and
So,
I failed.
so, so, so for those people, obviously, that they may be not so technical savvy, right? Everything is probably more cybersecurity, hacking, pen testing. So, what is SP? I know it's
Oh,
service
sorry.
provider, but what is this? What does that entail? Like, what does the SP entail?
So SP, like most of the Cisco technical tracks, is its own animal, right?
Hmm.
So Cisco did that on purpose. So SP, if you were to take, so if somebody has their CCNP in enterprise, for example, and they learned OSPF, EIGRP, BGP, a little bit of MPLS, and a little bit of DMVPN, you are about 5% of the way through the service provider track. It is a deep dive into BGP. It's a deep dive into multicast. It's a deep dive into MPLS VPNs, layer 2 VPN, layer 3 VPN, multicast VPN. So it's heavy centric on MPLS because that's essentially what service providers run, right?
Hmm.
Even the internet providers run MPLS in the backbone.
Hmm.
So I work for a service provider, so I know how we run our backbone. It's and when we talk backbones too, the type of networks you're deploying are drastically different, right? You take I would assume cybersecurity folks are working on your traditional campus or data center type network, right? Whether
Hmm.
it's a collapse core or a 3-tier architecture or a spine leaf, a cloth fabric, like you would see with VXLAN or an ACI fabric. Yeah, that doesn't really work well for service provider. Service provider is much more ring and large scale deployment when it comes to optical networking.
Hmm.
So whether it's, you got your DWDM environment, your dense wavelength division multiplexing, so your layer 1 signaling and whatnot, and then you have your optical, so your normal fiber that most people are familiar with.
Hmm.
So that really isn't played out with too much. You still have to understand the architectures that go into play with that and how your access connecting down to the end customer was going to work. And then you have your aggregation at your POPs, your points of presence around the country. And then you have your core backbone. How do you connect Chicago to Milwaukee, Milwaukee to Indianapolis, eventually down by you in South Florida.
Hmm.
So that's what service provider networks are doing. So if like right now, all the data that's going over this video flow is all routed via BGP, right?
Hmm.
So getting from point A to point B. And that's really, when you talk about service provider, that's the big thing is like, if you can understand BGP and you're really, really good at it, you can't just be, barely be able to stand up an iBGP or an eBGP peering. You got to be really strong in BGP, and you got to be equally, if not stronger, in MPLS.
Hmm.
And now the funny thing is, when if you would have wound the clock back, say 5 or 6 years, that would have been pretty much the extent of the old SPV3 exam. But SPV4 and SPV5, which is the current delivery, is heavy segment routing, which is the newest way that customer or service providers are doing delivery of that, which is, ironically, if you're familiar with policy-based routing or PBR, which is source-based routing, so is segment routing in
Hmm.
the way that it works. Labeling mechanism is predominantly the same, I'd say, for the most part, but it gives you a much wider berth of capabilities and things like that. So if anybody's interested in diving into that, I have a whole service provider playlist on my channel today that's got a lot of MPLS. It's heavy network focused because that's what it is. That's what I do. So if you're, into pen testing and doing all the cool red, blue, purple stuff that you guys do, that's how I just detach my brain and stick it somewhere in the corner because I just don't get it. I remember I was actually talking to you when we worked together, talking about, what was it, Metasploitable or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh wow, there's a hacking tool. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Metasploitable is a VM that you can practice a Linux-based virtual machine that
Sure.
you can actually spin up in VirtualBox or VMware Workstation and just go to town and learn how to hack. And it's just a vulnerable system, and it's for those who want to learn hacking.
Sure.
And yeah, so that's the cool stuff. So this is all good in the hood, right? If I go to your channel, we see maybe EVNG, and if those folks that don't have or don't know about EVNG, so how do we get started in setting up a networking lab from scratch? What is a networking lab? I can go obviously for my crowd, right? A pen testing lab or cyber lab. It takes maybe a decent laptop. We have VirtualBox or VMware Workstation. We have a Kali machine. Maybe we have a Windows server setting up Active Directory so we can attack AD. A couple client machines joined to that domain, and intercepting some LTLMV2 hashes, passing that around, blah blah blah. We can hack your stuff and get your passwords and crack your stuff.
Scared me, dude.
So that's the fun stuff that we do, or we can do from the outside or the external side. Go into your world, you can go to BGP, we can look at the blocks, and then we can go to Aaron and we can see who owns it. Then we can go towards that route and do some OSINT and an attack like that.
Yep.
That's from the external perimeter, working the way in.
Injection attacks to try to turn down BGP peering. Yep.
Yep. And then once we're inside, we could do VLAN hopping, do interview, all that good stuff. But now, we want to master networking. We want to become maybe a CCNA, CCNP. Where would we start?
Sure. So the cool thing about it is, a while back, I forget how long ago it was, Cisco has this simulator called Packet Tracer, and if you're that's where at least where I started. So it's this application. I do know you have to register with the Cisco Learning Network to download it, but it's got the latest versions of code, and it's in its term, it's a simulator, right? There's going to be certain things that work instantaneously when you're working with it. So, but it's a good learning tool when you don't know anything, because it teaches you both the hardware aspect of it, which is really important, but it also teaches you how to cabling, how to use a crossover cable versus a straight through cable, for how you're connecting things. So a lot of the things that you would learn in, say, your Network Plus or your CCNA, or even before that, your CCT, your Cisco Certified Technician type stuff, where you'd be the smart hands going on site to do something like move cable, put a new module in a router. You might have to upgrade. So some platforms support the ability of adding in SPA, a switch port. You can have 8 ports to a switch, or sorry, a router. It supports these ability to look at the box, and you actually have to insert the device. And so it gives you kind of that hands-on aspect of it. You got to do the cabling, right? You got to drag, device to device and make sure you're plugging into the right ports, stuff like that. So it's good in that respect because it teaches you some of the hands-on that you may not be able to do on your own. Especially, I'm fortunate to live in a house where I have the space to, I have a whole rack in my basement of gear that I've used for the past, basically the majority of my career. So if you don't have the means to, roll out like what you and I have, as long as you have a decent computer, even your cheap Walmart Acer $250 laptop can run this, and you can build out a decent sized network topology. And the cool thing about it is you don't have to do anything extravagant, right? You take a simple lab that I would build out if you're trying to do some basic routing and some understanding how switching works, would be two switches, 2 routers, and 4 PCs. You put that together and you can do, OSPF, EIGRP, RIP, layer 2 trunking. You can do understand how the MAC address table is built. Why is that important? And I will colloquially use the term layer 2 routing, because essentially layer 2 routing and layer 3 routing, You might feel like layer 2 routing. That's not a thing. Well, technically it is if you think about it. And I could justify my stance on that. But then going back to your point with like VLAN hopping, why is trunking security important? Why is port security important? Things like that. So it's one of those things where, as you're getting into it, packet tracer is a great place to start if you're just getting started. And back in the day, probably was it 08, 09, 2010, so somewhere in there. CBT Nuggets is where I started out, with Jeremy Char doing all the CCNA training. So it was good just to see somebody that knows what they're doing, walk you through the configuration. And it wasn't too much longer after that I switched over to INE, and I've been an INE student since then. Still am today. So it's, I tend to follow folks that are experts in their field because they're an expert for a reason, right? If I was going to get into cybersecurity, I would all of a sudden be like, what's the binge watching InfoSec Pat content because, I go to the people to know what they're doing because I don't want to be dragged around or like, I don't know, this guy knows what's up. But, it's one of those things where when you start getting into it, you need clear, concise training and to get you started because one of the things and I'm sure you saw when we worked together, one of the most common things we'd see people do is get frustrated when they were trying to do something very basic, but it would fail. And they were like, I don't understand as soon as somebody hits a brick wall, unless they're like actually enjoying what they're doing, other than just a task in order to check a box in order to complete something, they'll give up. And, it's actually, it happens with everything. It's like, the first time you try riding a bike, you're going to fall on your ass. It's going to happen. You have to deal with it. But, it's one of those things where I remember, I don't know if you ever dealt with her. I won't say any names here, just because of the fact that for anonymity, but there was one student that I had, when we were going through, like, we would have like these one-on-ones you could schedule with your instructor. And she she broke down on the call with me. We're on a Zoom call, full on, ugly cry. And I am like, I'm an engineer. That in my brain, I'm an engineer.
You're not a therapist.
I am not a therapist. I'm not I'm not your friend in a bad way, right? I'm not there. Like, I'm not there to like, I'm there to answer your question. That's it. I'm not there to be like, oh, honey, I am so sorry. Like I said, I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through. You described your problem to me, and I'm going to help you get past it. If you can share your screen, we can work through it. I was like, but at the end of the day, you're going to struggle. It's going to happen. Like, I struggle every day.
Me too. I still
it happens. I mean, for this afternoon, I finally was able to get an MSDP, and I'll talk. Like, I know some people are not going to have a clue what I'm talking about, but I finally got MSDP to work between two different service provider networks that I was building out for SP studies, and I was able to get the multicast to work between two different BGP autonomous systems. So we can get into that, but that's kind of more advanced multicast, advanced BGP, but stuff that's on the CCIE blueprint that I'm studying. So, but it was like, she goes into full on, freak out mode, and I'm just like, okay, calm down. It's not the end of the world. But that was common, doing that because they're entry level, they're just trying to get started and things like that. It's just like, well, it's, one thing that I notice a lot of people do is they try to put the cart before the horse, and they try to learn too much too quickly, and information overload, they don't get it. And I had to like pump the brakes and be like, okay, first of all, that's not exactly how you want to do this. And then if you can almost build like a decision tree, if you will, like if you get to this point, are you good? Yes or no? And I have been and always will be big on configure and verify. If you're make one change, go verify that change was taken, it was effective, it didn't break anything, and that you can continue moving forward. Because what a lot of people don't realize especially if they're in a change window, and a lot of times you'll have like a method of procedures, like a spreadsheet of the things you're going to do, config changes you're going to make, verification stuff. That's 80% of the work, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing a maintenance window, like 80% is building the spreadsheet, and 20% is the actual copy and pasting the configs in to apply the change. So I've gotten bit more times than I can count where I've broken something after I made a change. I'm like, oh shit, whether it's adding a statement to a route map to allow the routes to get propagated, or oh crap, I forgot to add the slash, like you do like a prefix list, do a /16 to encapsulate everything 192.168, but you forgot to add the greater than or equal to /24. He's like, oops, my bad. You've got one of these. How come you made the mistake? Like, dude, I'm human. Like, people
Yeah.
forget to do shit, especially if you're doing it on the fly.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. That's what it. I know we got kind of off track there, but it's one of those things where as you're digging into it, you got to start off with the simple stuff, right? You got to build, and things compound on top of each other, and that's literally what networking is. If you can't get layer 2 to work, layer 3 is never going to work, right? I'll follow the OSI model up from 1, 2, 3, and 4. As a network engineer, that's where you live: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very rarely do you ever stay in 4. Usually it's 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Hardware failures, 1. A box takes a shit, and you got to fix it. Power outage, things like that. Layer 1 problems are probably going to be less than 10% of your life when you're dealing with it. The rest of it's going to be other stuff that you never even thought of. Software on the box can crash. So the more experience you can get troubleshooting is going to be the better you can be. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, start with Packet Tracer because it's going to give you at least the basics with the deploy the device, do the cabling, then you're at the login, do the configuration, configure the IP addresses. That's one thing a lot of people don't even think about is, okay, the IP addressing. It's like, if I was to show a topology that I'm working on right now, it probably takes me a few hours to spin a topology up. Now I'm quick at it, but it still takes someone like me some time to do it. And then you got to look at it, the topology. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I can configure this like that. I can configure this like that. I can look at a network diagram and I can visualize the routing protocols, like overlaying them on top of each other. But that's just 15 years of experience. I can do that. So, it's to get. I know I keep saying to get started, Packet Tracer is a great place to start because at the end of the day, it really is.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And I remember I actually didn't start with Packet Tracer. I actually started with Real Gear. I went to networklabs.com or ciscolabs.com, whatever, something like labs. And it has like a little rack with, like you said, 2 routers, 2 switches, like 2900s or 2950s or whatever. Yeah, this is a long time ago, over 10 years ago. I took my CCNA in 2009. So it was a long time ago. And the thing is, I never went for the CCENT and then CCNA.
Oh, wow. You went the direct route.
Yeah. Because I was actually at a school called PC Professor down here in Boca.
Okay.
And the professor was so keen. He goes, do you like taking exams? I'm like, not really. I still get anxiety till today. He goes, okay, so just go for the 1. Why go for 2 if you can just do it 1 time? And I'm like, he made a really good point. But everyone, dude, like, back then I didn't know Keith Barker or Jeremy.
Sure.
I would just watch their videos. I'm like, fuck, like everyone's saying ICND 1, ICND 2. No one goes to fucking the number 1 or just the 1 exam route. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, dude. And back then, that's why I say networking, not TCP IP networking with folks is so critical because it's like, now you can ask these questions. Back then it was just like Google and watching some CBT nuggets, and I didn't have access to INE or anything like that. I think it was Pluralsight. I think that was another one back then that I had access to. And then it was CBT nuggets, Pluralsight. There was one more that I used to watch. But CBT nuggets was like, of course, the energy with, Jeremy, he's always like high on life. So it's like
something else.
Yeah. So it's like, he keeps you intrigued. He'll start talking about the leaves in his backyard and his daughter jumping in the pool one day. It's not, so I think that's pretty cool, but it's hard. I try to do take that little skill and I'm like, oh no, then I'll start talking for that for hours. I'm like, oh shit.
Sure.
But then I just got the real stuff. And the reason why I did that is because I listened to Jeremy, right? He was telling me there's something from like clicking like your blue console cable into your laptop and spinning up PuTTY or TerraTerm. I think it was TerraTerm.
Back then, TerraTerm.
Yeah, and like hitting enter and just seeing like something go, and then you configure your TTY lines and all that stuff. It's like, and then obviously years later, I started messing with Packet Tracer just because. Back then it consumes a lot of electricity and it gets freaking hot. Like you see that rack back there, I had it in this room Now, obviously, I have a daughter. I have other things going on, so I have to utilize those rooms to take away my sneakers and put my child's stuff in.
Priorities.
Yeah, exactly. So then I sold my my thing, and then I started using GNS3, and then GNS3 had its limitations. Like I'm only going to go so far live because obviously you have to buy the Cisco licenses and all that stuff,
Right.
or you can find them on the interwebs, but that's all up to you.
Google foo.
Yeah, Google foo, exactly. And then I came across EvenG, and that's when I started like, man, this is cool. And I was using Cisco Model. No, is this Cisco Model Labs? What was it like? Was it CML that you can download the ISOs or download the images from Cisco Model Labs? And because that was like the way around it, right? Like you can get this $200 thing, and then you just fucking download them all, and you can set it up.
Yep. That's what I do.
Yeah. And that's what I was doing when I did the NP security. And yeah, that's so the moral of the story is like there's a million ways to get the experience. Obviously, Rob, I'll keep this in your house because I don't do networking route switch hardly ever anymore. Sometimes like obviously I can configure my own firewall. I can I have pfSense over there on a different. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually like it because it's easy, and I have like I do like CTFs. I host CTFs for like friends. So like it's on a T-Mobile network, and I just like, oh, Rob, here's a fucking username, password, and just remote in, and then and then I can whack your access after the CTF is done.
Sure.
But so is there any better way to do that besides OpenVPN and what was this?
PFSense.
Yeah, PFSense.
I mean, better. I wouldn't say better. I'd say different. I mean, So being a Cisco guy, and that's being what I do for a living. My home lab, there's really no secret out what I run. So I've got an ASA firewall that terminates my internet. I just upgraded recently to a 5525X.
Mm-hmm.
I upgraded my internet to gig, so I needed a bigger, more bigger box with more throughput. Throughput. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got that, and then behind it is a 3750X switch that's next to my core. I run OSPF between the two, and I got a default route. I'm a network guy, right? I'm gonna have a little bit of fanciness going on.
Mm-hmm.
Behind that, I got a bunch of servers. So before I used to have a rack of equipment. Back in 2013, after I had my NP and I was going after my IE, I went out. I spent a weekend, I think, on eBay, just buying physical hardware, 3725s, 2960s, 3550s, a bunch of hardware to build out an actual rack because it was V4 and it was an all physical lab at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the exact same thing, and I did a lot of my early training, 10 years ago, was all physical equipment. And so it was, I did the exact same thing. And then, there is something with clicking a button or that little tab on your RJ45 jack.
Yeah. Hey,
click it, you hear it, ting, and it's connected. So it's one of those things where you do what you got to do to get the job done. And it was 4 or 5 months later. It wasn't long. And then Cisco announced V5, and then it was like it was going to be all virtual. And I didn't tell my wife. I'm like, I'm not saying that I just blew $2,000 from our tax return on hardware for me to pass the CCIE that is now just about as valuable as a boat anchor. So it's all in the basement still. I haven't gotten rid of it. There's why no one's going to buy it.
So I wanted to ask you a question for those, if anyone, even if it's in cybersecurity. I'm a big, I have actually firewalls and real stuff. I don't just have my modem connected to the internet. Even on my backup network, I have the wireless, and it terminates into a little NUC that I run pfSense, and I do all my route and stuff. Do you recommend, I know you're going to be biased because you're a network guy, but say, for example, like someone is new to, cybersecurity, networking, IT, do you recommend them go and say, fuck it, I'm not going to go buy something from Best Buy or a little router, wireless router, do you recommend them actually getting a physical firewall and then saying, okay, I want to get an access point if they have the means, right? Let's say they have the means, and then say, okay, I want to get, an actual firewall, if it's whatever, Palo Alto, ASA, Ubiquity, whatever you're going to get in your house, and just actually do like maybe have some VLANs. Like I have VLANs for like some stuff. I have, a little IDS and a honeypot that I mess with, and I VLAN my traffic off. And like my TVs go on one VLAN, the other stuff goes on another VLAN, so it's not communicating. And unless you do some into VLAN, some VLAN hopping and doing some fun stuff like that. But do you like recommend that, or do you say go get your own wireless router, have your internet work, and then do all this in your own fancy lab? What would you recommend?
So I'd answer it two different ways. Mm-hmm. So if you don't know anything and you're not sure which way to go, and you've got the interwebs at your fingertips, and you're like, okay, what's a good firewall to buy to terminate home internet on? You're going to get 10 million results, mm-hmm. right? So how do you suss through the BS to find out what you really need? So my opinion is, when it comes down to that, and of course I'm biased towards networking. So for a long time, I had a router, a 3725, terminating my home internet, and I would do a one-to-one. I would do a PAT I would just RDP. I would plug in my public IP address. Boom, I'd be attached to my home computer. Mm-hmm. So I got hacked. I had a computer sitting in a server. It was a virtual machine just running Windows 7 that I was using as a jump box to test some stuff out. I logged into this sucker via RDP, and somebody had some Russian site pulled up. All in Cyrillic. I'm like, oh shit, this isn't good.
So when you saw that, do you know how they did that? Do you know how they found your port open? Do you have any till today? Like, so say for example, if I found your stuff on the internet, do you have an idea of how they do that?
I can speculate based off of what I know from the security stuff that I've gone through, mm-hmm. And it's not hard. It's not hard at all to do. You can do a network mapper and map. You can do a scan on a particular IP address, and as long as the service provider isn't blocking those ports, which most of them don't, mm-hmm. You can simply scan what open ports are on a particular public IP address, get TCP and UDP, and it'll kick back, hey, these ports are open. So then it's just a matter of figuring out usernames and passwords. And most people, myself included, have their personal information has been in part of a breach. Yep. So you got to go through the process of changing passwords and things like that. So I try to keep my finance passwords completely separate from anything I use internally in the home network. Mm-hmm. So, that's like my one security vulnerability. It's, a thing that I try to do to try to eliminate that or mitigate that. But, it's because the same tools that hackers use to figure out what stuff's open is the same thing network engineers do to figure out, okay, is this working? Yeah. I can do a TCP telnet test to a particular port IP or IP to a port and be like, mm-hmm. Oh, it opened up. Okay, I know the port. I know, we do it all the time. When I'd open up telnet or PuTTY, sorry. I plug in a private IP address and I open up to port 80. And if it pops open, I know the web server socket is listening.
Yep.
It's like, oh, mm-hmm. It's not responding. Well, then you need to go talk to the web admin. Maybe they need to restart IIS.
Yep.
Or Apache. Or, mm-hmm. Or whatever they're running. So yeah, like the same tools you guys use, we use. Yeah. It's just, the intent is different, is what it comes down to. So yeah, it's and now I'm speculating as whether or not it's the case, but I mean, you got a big cheesy smile on your face. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah. But, yeah, exactly. And just as like when you're doing an assessment, right? When you're doing, and the thing I find that funny, I have a cheesy smile, is because I did an assessment. I actually put a video and I emulated that same situation. I was on an engagement and they said, we did a pen test. The pen tester said everything is all right. This was like 6 months ago. We didn't really change anything. We want to make sure everything is still up to par because they have to do their compliant audit, whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And, they give us our scope, our IPs, whatever, /29. And we say, okay, we can only touch this scope of IPs. So we do our reconnaissance stuff and stuff like that. And we use a tool called Shodan.
Okay.
So if you go to shodan.io, you could throw an IP address, and yeah, you could do nmap and all that stuff. But this will give you it's a lot quicker,
Okay.
at least in my opinion. And RDP and FTP was open, and I was like, okay, cool deal. Obviously, I knew a little bit about the organization, right? Like, so it was sort of like a gray area. It was not a full black box assessment because I had some information about them. But we had to go into the dark web and do a data breach discovery and look at this username, because we can just go to like hunter.io, put this email address in, see, okay, Rob's email is legit, or it's responding, or we can just do a SMP, SMTP relay, see if it responds from whatever 586 or 25 or whatever, and say, okay, this is good to go. Bum bum bum, bing bong, like Sticky said. And we'll get to your questions, and we'll get to the stuff in a sec. And then literally in about, I would say 25, 30 minutes, I was able to RDP into that machine. And then I was able to compromise, because they're using IIS because they were a Microsoft shop, and their FTP server was anonymous login. So we were able to just use like FileZilla, FTP, port 21, bum, bum, bum. We were on the route, and then, that's it. The intent was just to showcase that they were vulnerable. They were, we were able to exploit them. We're not uploading malware or doing any craziness, but
right.
And it was an easy fix, right? We talked to the network guy. Hey, man, close this off, or do like, if someone needs RDP access, do a 1-to-1 NAT or 1-to-1 PAT or whatever the fuck it is today. I don't know, but like, do this and then say, okay, only from this IP to this IP, we're allowing this port to traverse at 3389. And obviously, I think it was like 2 weeks later, we retested it and it was all good. But yeah, it's just crazy because people don't realize, even when you're fiddling with your firewall or your router at home, and you're just like saying, oh, I want to do, open up this port for my NAS. Meanwhile, like, you may be exposing this to the world and not even realizing, just because you need to access it from your, machine from that's sitting next to you. But now, even if you have DHCP, like I have DDNS on a lot of my stuff because I'm cheapskate and I'm not going to pay for a static IP. But yeah, but even if you have a dynamic IP, like I had the same dynamic IP, no joke, for like 3 years.
Okay.
They haven't changed my shit. So I mean, not jinx that, but
so get a new device, a new MAC address, it'll give you a new IP.
Yeah, exactly. So I've had that for like that same modem for like fucking 3 years. So yeah, so obviously that's why I had the smirk on my face. So I know we're at about 40 minutes, and Dan, how can I get ready for with labs for CCNP security? I don't know how it is now. How would you recommend getting someone their CCNP security? I don't know if you're still on, but if you are, there's quite a few people connected. So
okay. So my opinion on that is, I was talking about this earlier today because there's one of my subscribers is in the chat, JK Rowell. The thing that I always recommend, so you're clearly going after it. It depends on which particular exams you're going after. So I would assume core and then one of the concentrations. I went after VPN because I had just a ton of experience from route switch going over site to site VPN, DMVPN, Flex VPN, all that garbage. So I say garbage in a joking term. There's a lot to it when it comes to VPN. So what I did when I was studying for it was getting access to, well, first of all, back then it was Viral, the virtual.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, yep. The Viral.
Viral was the predecessor to CML.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it was CML internally and then Viral publicly or something like that. But
gotcha.
So then they went over to CML probably 5 years ago, maybe, something like that. It's a good platform. It's a virtual machine. It's absolutely no different than Eve in respect to what it supports. If you're staying small, if you're going to go above, I think it's a 20 node limit. So in most cases, if you're going to deploy a lab as a virtual machine inside of whatever hypervisor you want to roll out, you're going to have a 20 node limit. Eve doesn't have a limit. I can roll out 100 devices if I wanted to. And that's one of the reasons why I like Eve as much as I do. So now I have 3 dedicated servers running 24 hours a day in my basement. I've got 2 Dell R810s, and I've got a Cisco C240. One second. C240 M5 that I bought probably a year and change ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Now the 2 Dell servers are, and I can put the specs. You can post them after this or wherever you want. But they're beasts. I
Mm-hmm.
bought them at the time I was working at my last job, where I had 3 major customers that I was working at. They were all hospitals in 3 different areas, and I basically had to build out their entire environments in a lab because they had so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're dedicated to a particular customers, that it just made more sense to do that. Nexus 9 case, ASAs, Palos. I had a whole bunch of stuff inside this environment. I replicated their environment in a lab, so the changes were relatively easy. But that's all I did basically for those customers. Now that I don't work there anymore, I've been able to repurpose them to just be stuff for the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big proponent of Eve bare metal because it gives you direct access, no different than if you were to deploy ESXi and deploy virtual machines.
Mm-hmm.
So now for me, I'm studying for service provider. So basically the exact same kind of look. I look at the blueprint. What technologies do I need to learn? If you're going to go after the core, you're obviously going to need to know ASA, FTD, ICE, WSA, ESA. What else is out there? So email and web security appliance, identity management, all that stuff is going to get covered. So I remember when they came out with those exams where I was just like, you might as well go through the concentrations first because that'll help knock out the core. To do it in the reverse order. But so that's what I would do is go get CML access. And I did a video on this probably a year ago, maybe, where I talked about $1,000 investment could net you $100,000 income. And what I based the breakdown was go buy a server off of eBay that's got some decent compute. When you do the math on it, and I talk about how you figure out how much compute you're going to get and how much RAM you're going to need to run. So if you can get 48 gigahertz or better, and then about 128 gigs of RAM, that's a really good, solid platform for you to run. If you need to run larger topologies for whatever reason, then I would recommend bare metal install of Eve. You can get it for free. You just install it through the ISO. The process is pretty straightforward. There's lots of documentation on it. And then you can just upload your images to Eve through FTP. I use FileZilla for it. And then you can start rolling out what you want to do. So I've got 2 servers that are dedicated to that. Both are running Eve Pro. And then I've got my C240. I purposely bought that because at the time I was doing a crap ton of VMware work. And I was working with ESXi 8, NSX4, Horizon 8. So I needed a platform where I could run all the latest and greatest versions of ESXi and not have any of the any limitations or have to like hack the CPU masking and all the garbage that they've been doing lately. So I did that, and I'm when you start going to ESXi 8, you need to go into the bronze, silver, gold versions of Intel processors. So the old Xeon, some of the version 2s, version 3s will support it, but like 7.2, 7.3. But if you wanted to go anything new, I'm on 8. You need gold to run, and I purposely bought the server to where it was basically going to future-proof me for at least a few years to go through the material. So I run a couple of virtual machines of Eve on that, and there's a comment in there about how ESXi only allows for 8 cores to be assigned to the VM. Initially, that's what the VM comes with, and if you understand how virtual machine works, if you understand VMware Data Center, then which I do, you can bring the VM online. And so when you bring it online, you can choose to not power on after deployment. That's what I do. Then I go in and I adjust the CPU count up higher, the same with the RAM. So I'll bump the CPU count. I think one of them I've got here is, I had to log back in again. But I think I gave it like 16 CPUs or something like that because I've got 88 cores to play with. So I gave it plenty of horsepower to do the job. This one's got 16 CPUs and 64 gigs of RAM. So, and it's sitting like 20% utilization. So, as long as you have a server that has the horsepower, you can build out whatever size topology you want, and to meet whatever you want. So, do you recommend more cores? So obviously, I recommend more cores. The CSRs are resource hungry, but the one thing that I will let you know is especially if you're digging into more complicated networking, iOS XE and iOS are two different platforms, two different architectures. So when you look at how they come together, the QFP, the quantum flow processor, it's more of a, I'm going to say Debian for lack of knowing the actual like distribution breakdown of how Linux works, but it's like the Debian distro. I could be using the wrong Linux deviation, but you get my drift. So it's broken down more like that, to where it's more daemon based versus monolithic like iOS is. So yes, it's going to take more horsepower, but you also have more capabilities that are available. Like on iOS, you can't do VPLS. Now these are service provider specific topics. You can't do VPLS because there's no way for you to do Ethernet flow points, right? That's not a supported capability on that box. So you can do X connects, which are just basically pseudo wired layer 2 extension between two devices, but no different than L2TP-v3, stuff like that. But as long as you're not doing anything crazy or super fancy with it, if you deploy Eve with, I always recommend 16 CPUs, 32 gigs of RAM. If you're doing iOS routers, because you don't need anything super fancy or super specific, it should do the job. I mean, there's Get VPN, for example, or what else is there? If you're going to do like a DMVPN with Get VPN, or you're going to do the DMVPN routing option and then put Get VPN on top of it, iOS doesn't support that as far as I know. That's only an iOS XE thing. But those are specific things that you'd have to dig into the documentation to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. But if you have a specific question, jump over to my channel, post it in the comments. And every week I do a Tech Support Thursday video where I take the comment section, I put it into a recorded video, and I go through all the questions and I answer them to the best of my knowledge. And I try to do that every week to try to answer people's questions. And there's this one guy, I think he's in your chat, who like just bombs me with like tons of questions, but it's great because it gives me lots of content to record on.
So the crypto packet?
No, it's the JK Rao. He has like,
I guess maybe he's on your side, because I don't see that. Yeah. And and that's what I ended up doing now, right? Like I'll just like ask, like, hey, like in my Discord or on Instagram, whatever. It's like, hey, like what is some stuff that you want to see? And then like a lot of people was like, oh, on Saturday mornings, why don't you just do like a live hacking session, and we can just hang out, shoot the shit, and hack some stuff. And I'll do like hack the box and try hack me's and stuff like that. So that's definitely helpful for us doing some content creation and interacting with your audiences, stuff like that. Sure. And Paul, the house panel just approved they build up. All right, so I don't use TikTok. I have a TikTok account, but I don't even know how to use it. A lot of people will tell me, I can use it and I can get blown up and all that stuff, but I really don't use TikTok. As a security professional who is in the social media where like my thoughts, Paul, like to be 100% honest, like I don't really know because I don't use TikTok. Rob, do you use TikTok?
I used to. I used to use it. To me, it's no different than Instagram in that respect. And I tried to comment once on a video or whatever they call it in Instagram, and apparently my comment was too sensitive. I called somebody an idiot, and that was offensive against community guidelines. So I actually just uninstalled Instagram. It's like if there's too many what's the word, snowflakes, and too many lilies out there.
Yeah.
Especially with if to work in our industry, you gotta have some thick skin to deal with some of the stuff. We talk shit to each other all the time. So that's just kind of how it goes. Now, my opinion on the House approving a bill to ban TikTok, unless they divest within the next 165 days. Here's the funny thing. We're not China, so there's no Great Wall or Great Firewall to block the ports. So I want to know, how does the U.S. government plan on trying to enforce that? what's their goal? Like, is it a monetary thing? Because if you think about it, all of the service providers in this country, and I work for one of them, they don't really block what's going on at layer 7 unless there's a specific attack going on, like a DDoS, and that's one thing we're going to mitigate. But if you think about it from that perspective, how are they going to prevent people that have the app on their phone? I've got 2 people in the house that are on it. So I know my public IP address shows up on TikTok server somewhere. Do I care? I really don't. Like, to me, it's no different than Instagram or what are the half the other Tinder, Grinder, whatever the garbage that's going on out there for stuff. But like, I don't care. Like, to me, it's just another social media app. To me, TikTok is the non-dating version of Tinder. It's just a bunch of garbage on there. But so I want to know how they're going to like actually ban an application that's available in the Play stores from doing their thing. That's what I want to know. But, I find it funny because it's like, because if you think about it from the way that the internet routing works, right? Are there ways for service providers to block things? Sure, but we have firewalls all over the place. 95% of what we do is running on platforms that are just big ass firewalls.
Yeah,
running lots of BGP. So if you take that into consideration, if it would have to really come down to, because there's no like, are there firewalls on the internet? Yes, there are. They're all over the place. But do the big service providers, the Spectrums, the AT&Ts, the Verizons, are they going to go into conceivably millions of pieces of equipment and go in there and create geo-based IP rules, firewall rules to block all of the TikTok-specific public addresses that are being used today? I mean, they could. I don't see that happening. On a large scale, you got to think about it from a transport perspective, and because that's the world I live in now. From a transport perspective, I know in just my geographic area, there's like 150 hub routers, and that's just hubs. That doesn't have anything to do with the access. That's not the aggregation. And we can talk about service provider architecture if you want to get an idea of the scale. We're talking hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment, and most of those are going to be managed through a central point of management. You're not gonna have guys like me logging into the CLI and making config changes like that. Unless it's specific technologies like VPLS where you're doing, VLAN level configuration. That's a different situation. There's an app for that too, but there's an app for everything really. But when you're talking that large a scale, as far as I'm concerned, the house can do whatever the hell they want, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I want to know how they're going to enforce that. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that I don't know. I know we only have a few more minutes, and good luck with your CCNA next Friday. You got that. Kill it. If you have any questions, hit up Rob, not me.
Yeah, man. Hit me up.
Hey, guy. Hey, what's up, Rob? How's it going? Hey, guys. Sorry, I go. Networking now. We talking my terms. Yeah, he's a buddy, Rob. Today was all about networking, setting up labs, and understanding how to set that stuff up.
Do you have a hard stop? Because I don't. I can keep going if you want to.
Yeah, 8:00. Because I have a hockey game, and so like 8. But if there's any questions, CCNA is a jam high school. Yeah. It was not.
It's actually what I'm having one of my youngest son go through right now. Is once he gets his grades squared away, I'm getting him doing some cloud stuff so that he can walk out of high school making decent money. At least that's my plan.
Yeah. No, I think it's so critical. Like, I remember when I was in high school, obviously I wasn't interested in computers at all at high school, but Devils going to take the cup. No, the Panthers, I think, going to take the cup. I'm a Ranger fan. And now, like, I'm just going to look at the score right now. The Panthers it's tied 0-0. But the Panthers just got like Vladimir. I don't know, man. This fucking team is stacked. Like they beat the Rangers twice this year. I was at the first game. They beat them the other night. They're a good team. A good team. Oh man, they're scary.
I don't follow hockey at all. I wouldn't even know. I barely follow. I don't really know much of a sports fan. Period.
Yeah,
I'm big into bodybuilding. That's kind of my thing. The Honor Classic was this past weekend, so that was interesting. But
yeah,
it's I got nothing back from you. I'm like, you don't know nothing about that either.
Yeah.
That's good
No,
stuff.
I go to the gym, but I don't really watch anything really. Actually, like I know it's been a minute since I actually started doing arm wrestling.
Oh, did you
So
now?
yeah.
Okay.
So and it actually started, and it's a funny story. There's probably people that are probably tuned in that know my story, but I went to DEF CON last year.
Mhm.
It's a hacking conference out in Vegas. And I was with my friend Myro, the guy that was in there, said "Bing Bong, how you
Okay.
doing?" or whatever, and a couple other friends, and I think James was with me, and it was James. I don't remember who was with me, or it was someone else, but we were online, like on the line to I don't know, go to a workshop or whatever. I don't remember, and in one of the villages, and one kid said, "Hey, are you InfoSec Pat? Can I arm wrestle you?" I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, who are you, dude? Like, I'm like, hey, man, like, I wouldn't mind, but, and then I think it was James. James was like, he's really strong. And the kid was, he looked pretty jacked himself. Like, he was big. He was not like cut up. He was just a big kid. And I'm like, I was a little, I arm wrestled before, like, fucking around, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
let's go. But I never and I realized, I didn't realize how strong I really was, right?
Okay.
Like till today, this is not to like toot my horn or anything. But I've arm wrestled over 50 people. No one can move my arm.
Really?
Like I'm like this, you can't move it. And I give it like 3 seconds and I just slam you. Like I just and I say this and I say this with the
Humility?
yeah, I'm scared to say it, but I think I have retard strength, you know? So, and I just say it because, I don't give a fuck, but I think I do because I have friends grew up that, like I have one friend that, he was on the spectrum and he was strong. Like he would wrestle with us and beat us up. Right.
Okay.
So this is when I was like 10, 11. And now I'm like realizing like, man, I can do this. So I started like actually training arm wrestling. Like there's movements, there's like, so work your forearms out and like little like things for your wrists. And yeah, so I want to be going to a few conferences and I know a few people that want to arm wrestle me. So yeah, man.
Like Devin
So
Laurent, the arm wrestling guy that you see on social media, that's like, the beat, that dude. And then there's
Schoolboy, the Russian kid.
no, there's Devin. I can't remember. I want to say Laurent is his last name. Some Canadian. I think he's Canadian.
I
But
don't
he's like,
know.
I see him online, and there's another dude like the arm wrestling whisperer, some dude that wears a pair of
Oh,
sunglasses.
yeah. And he's always like, hey, let's do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I'm like, wow, okay, dude.
he'll just
I'm
like,
like, all right,
yeah,
whatever.
he'll just whisper in your ear. Like he's pretty good. Obviously, I went to one meetup that they did arm wrestling, and I was scared because I'm like, okay, I arm wrestle friends or just like some people, out of the ordinary, not people
Sure.
that actually do this shit, And the same thing, like I went, I was scared. I remember the first time when I went up on the little thing, I was like, oh fuck, this guy's gonna break the shit in my arm. Like, and I even told him, I was like, hey man, like, can you take it easy? And I'm like, he's like, 1, 2, 3. And when you really go, I'm gonna try to pin you. I'm not gonna like, if I'm arm wrestling a friend, I'll tease you a little bit. And I pinned him. I'm like, oh shit. And he goes, wow, you're really strong. And I'm like, well, really? And then that's when I realized, okay, like I think I can, I think I can do this. And that's when
Sure.
when I started doing it. But let's see, Rob. A quick question. Want to pick your brains on something really quick to see how you take it? Yeah, go ahead,
Send
Rob.
it.
And the Devils are going to win the cup. Devils suck.
Yeah.
Devils. I remember like when Brodeur, like I think we were talking about that the other day, like when Brodeur and with Robert, that's when the days of the Devils, like they were good. But yeah, Rob, send the question and we'll answer it up. Oh man. So any big plans for the weekend?
I am gonna do some smoking on the Traeger. That's like my other thing now that I do. And then I know it's off camera, but probably gonna jam on the guitar for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All the good stuff that goes along with that, and enjoy my weekend. Okay, Windows Server and Task Manager under memory. I have 51.4 gigabytes being used on caches. Possible to clear that up.
So, I was smoking some herbs this weekend too. Okay, cool. So, what I would do to do that, like, this might sound cheesy, but this is what I would do. I would just install like advanced system care, and then everything that shows in memory, you can clear that out with a click of a button, and then you can just open up your task manager to see if the memory is really clear, or you can just go and kill the task. But if it's like cache memory, that's the way I do it. Like still do it till today. I have it running on my machine, and like especially that happens when I'm running my pen testing lab, and then like I'll shut all of my VMs and I'll shut VMware Workstation down, and it'll still be like this much utilization, and I'll look, and it'll like the process will get hooked or hung up or whatever, and I'll just clear all the RAM, and I'll go back in and it clears. But I don't know if there's any other tricks. I don't really do desktop support anymore, but
yeah, neither do I. I would reboot.
Well, you can do a reboot. Yeah, you can do
I would 900 megabytes of RAM. Wow. Okay, something's not right with your system there, buddy. So you just got a Gorilla Grills. Yeah, they're a good smoker too. I've got two Traegers. I got one here at the house and I got one up north. I like smoking meat and stuff like that. So it's definitely a the more you mess with it, the more you want to see what you can do with it. So I haven't quite mastered brisket yet, although I can crush pulled pork. Like I can, like, if you don't like pulled pork, wait till you try mine. You'll be a pulled pork lover. But I'd love to, once life gets a little bit further ahead of me and I get a little bit older and my youngest is done with high school, I'd love to open up a food truck.
Yeah, that'll be sick.
Go do something like that. And so the IT pays the bills, and I want to go do something else besides in front of the computer all the time.
Yeah, no, make a little hobby and then make a couple of dollars while you're doing it. It's
exactly.
Like not wrong with that.
Exactly.
All right. So if no one has anything else, well, Pat knows I'm running the HP Pro 208 gigs of RAM. Yep, with 15 servers running inside of it.
That's a solid platform.
Yeah. So, Rob, just reboot this shit. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'll just say reboot it.
Reboot it.
Reboot the VM. You can just reboot the VM and see if that frees up. And if not, just reboot the whole host. I don't know. Maybe it's something.
Yeah, I mean, that's
wonky.
what I have to do to mine. Like, once I get done running a heavy lab inside of Eve, I have to reboot the server itself, and then it starts to relax a little bit. And every once in a while, I'll have to log into the SimC, and I'll have to reboot I'll do a cold, I'll pull the power reboot, because you just need to flush the RAM. And especially if you got a lot of processes that are running in RAM, a lot of stuff runs in RAM. Especially if you're doing a lot of caching, like high-end video editing. If you got a caching server, you got 256 gigs of RAM sitting on 10 terabytes flash storage. That's going to be a ton of RAM. It's going to be for the speed. You'll have to end up rebooting it after you're done with it.
I wasn't sure if I was cache.
Maybe, but yeah. No, I would. I don't know, man. If you're running a gig on DNS, that sounds a little fishy to me. It's not right.
Awesome, Crypto Packet. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, I want to wrap it up because I want to go get some food, watch some hockey, and then we'll definitely keep in touch, Rob. I'll hit you up. And if you ever do any of these lives, or if you ever want to collaborate on your side of the house, let me know. Even if you want to do a pre-recorded, whatever you want to do, we can chillax and maybe we'll do some hacking stuff on your end and showcase that on yours. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. We had a cool little. Rob, we have 12 of your guys, and I can see up here. If you look on the top left, I think it's 48. Do you see that on the top left? On your top left of the screen, do you see it says live an hour and 4 minutes? And
I do see that.
the number with the little I.
No, I don't see that.
Oh, maybe because you're just a guest.
Yeah.
All right. So I can see there's about 12 people on your side. So thank you so much for tuning in from Rob's side, and and one on Twitch. I don't even know how to use Twitch. So thank you for watching.
I don't know how to use it. A long time ago. I tried, but it never went anywhere.
Yeah. Awesome, guy. Thank you so much. And have a blessed day. Stay safe and keep learning. Much love, guys.
Take it easy, guys.